Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dave Cuthbert. I'm the convener of the Kinross-shire committee. On my right is the vice convener, Richard Waters. We're going to start the meeting by going around the table and people can introduce themselves. Sarah, do you want to start?
All right, Sarah Bruce Jones. I'm from Fossway Community Development Trust.
Lamar Chint, and I'm also from the Fossway Community Development Trust.
Very much. I'm from Fort Law Community Friends.
I'm Willie Robertson. I'm the Commercial Ward Councillor. Neil Bingham, Norman Port Norwell Community Councillor. Drew Smart, Glenfarb Community Council.
I'm Kirsty Easton, Business Place Investment Team Leader at Perth Council.
I've introduced myself.
Cuthbert also introduced me, so that's the.
Yes, I'm Michael Findlay. I'm worked in the traffic network team, mainly dealing with urban traffic control and active travel for Preston Kinross.
Like West Kinross Community Council.
John Gordon, Christian, Urban Community Council.
Sharon Rice Jones, Team Leader for External Funding Team.
David Smith, I'm chair of the Rural Community Development LAG with Preston Kinross.
Neil Freshwater, elected member for Kinross-shire.
I think we'll stick with just the room because I think all of the members are on the table or in here in person. When you come to sort of introduce your papers or whatever, if you can just say who you are and what you are, that'd be appreciated. I think we've got a full attendance. All 6 community councils are represented, so that's good.
No, unless you're going to allow one of us to speak.
Well, you can represent the council on this
Okay,
occasion.
can I represent Fossway Community Council?
I don't know if it can. It's not for us to decide, is it? Not for them to decide. So
We can't. I mean, I've spoken to Karen about this
Okay.
already, that if they couldn't get someone, they should send their
Okay.
apologies.
So we have apologies from Fossaway. Moving on, declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? Around the table. Nobody's interested in anything tonight? No? Okay. Moving on, the minute of the meeting of the Kinross Committee of the 4th of December. Are we all happy with what's in it? Any matters arising? Can we approve them?
Yep.
Okay, so they're approved. That's it. So the first substantive thing is road safety average speed cameras, and we've got Daryl and not sure who else is here. Do you want to introduce yourself, Daryl?
Yeah, that's fine. Regarding the safety cameras, they're operated by a partnership run between Police Scotland and Transport Scotland. And I know that we have invited the safety camera manager for the area to set up a meeting with the ward councillors about the possibility of a trial on the A977. I'm not aware of any date's been set for that meeting yet.
It hasn't as such because we're still deeply involved in budgets, but we will make the meeting. And in terms of the road safety update?
I think Michael will probably cover quite a bit of it in relation to the active travel. We are working on drawings and explanatory letters to go out to the elected members and the community councils for the possibility of putting in physical measures along the A977 at the entrances and through the centre of each of the villages, similar to what we're trialling on the A94, which is the Perth to Forfar road. Following the opening of the Crosstail Link Road and the increased volumes of traffic on that route, we put ramps in at the entrances to the village and we've been monitoring the speeds. We've just set the date for the next round of public meetings, which is in the middle of March, and that's to discuss with those communities whether they want to see ramps or speed cushions or chicanes, priority systems, various physical measures in the centre of the village. Now, the route is similar in volume and in alignment to the A977, so we would like to start that discussion with the communities along that road. I touched on it, I think, at the last meeting and said it would be into the new calendar year before we had an opportunity to prepare any documentation. The intention is to send that out to you within the next few weeks.
Good. Does anyone have any questions?
Could I ask a question? There's still some anomalies in different places, Darryl, with regard to the new speed limits. How far are we from getting all the VS signs and things altered to the correct reading?
I wasn't aware that there were any that were still to be recalibrated to the new lower limit. If you can let me know the locations, we can certainly get our contractor in and get those reset.
Okay, right, I'll do that.
Anyone else got any other questions? Nope. Okay. Did you say that Matthew was going to cover the other parts of the road safety? Then?
No, Michael.
Michael, right?
Yeah.
So it's you. I'm dyslexic. Names. Don't begin with N.
Yeah, so we're able to bring up the slides that I. So we'll start off with the park and rides.
Yeah. Maybe not. Oh yeah. There you go.
So to give you kind of a brief overview, the elected members have now been kind of sent these plans and looking for some feedback on kind of options appraisal of kind of the different things we can provide at the park and ride. The main element of the project is to create a sustainable transport hub. So it's all about improving facilities for people travelling to the park and ride by active travel, so walking and cycling, providing better cycle parking, and also creating the overall experience for users waiting in the shelters and kind of making the area a bit nicer as well. So we've got a number of different proposals. On this slide here is kind of the general project overview. And so we have the main park and ride itself, the enclosed site. They are the proposals that I'll come on to in the future slides. But on this plan here, you'll see kind of the 2 pedestrian crossings that we have planned. So our intention for both these locations is these connect into kind of the wider active travel network. So following on for this project, we also have a crossing on Springfield Road that will also come along later this year. And that will eventually connect kind of Milnathort all the way down to the south of Kinross through kind of the remote path network. And so this is part of kind of a strategic look at how we connect the whole of Kinross using these paths. So we feel like the 2 pedestrian crossings are kind of perfectly located to try and get people to and from the site and connect them to that wider network. If anyone has any thoughts on kind of the locations, then happy to receive any feedback or any recommendations. Yourselves will know the area better than myself, and so happy to take anything on board.
Can I just check everyone understands where these lights are being proposed? Is everyone comfortable with that? With the park and ride, Sainsbury's station and station road? All happy?
Are the 2 traffic lights at the top just crossing Springfield Road, not Springfield Road, Station Road, or is it crossing over the road down into the park and ride as well?
No, it's just covering
just Station Road.
So there's no pedestrian crossing on that section going from walking along Station Road. So there's still no crossing there.
It's one of the primary. They're along at the primary school.
No, I'm meaning when you turn left at a Station Road down to the Sainsbury's and the park and ride, that's where it's really difficult to get across the road.
Because yeah.
What, the entrance into Sainsbury's?
No, the entrance, the Station Road, turn left down towards the park and ride. If you try to cross that road, there's 3 lanes, 2 lanes going that way and 1 lane coming back in, and that's a difficult road to cross.
Yes, so probably one thing to point out is it's very light on the map, but the junction at Front Station Road and Junction Road itself, we will look to actually amend the curb lines there. So to accommodate the pedestrian crossing on Station Road itself, we need to make sure kind of visibility is improved for pedestrians and for vehicles coming out of the junction as well. And so realistically, what we'll probably see is that junction kind of tighten up. So the junction should be better visibility and a shorter crossing. I suppose that might still be a hard point to cross. It might be improved. I suppose it's something we can look into. Our thought was that crossing on Station Road and kind of that movement was probably the primary focus for that area. But again, happy to.
It's a difficult one to deal with because you've got, that fits in with this idea that you've got an active travel corridor that's heading up towards Milnathort. But you still, from Sainsbury's perspective in the park and ride, you have people coming all over from Kinross from different directions. So I'm not sure what could you have another crossing, or does that get overkill when you've got too many too many
I think
pedestrian
Drew's point is
crossings.
well made. I think
No,
there's a
it's-
point we've raised before that you can't, if you're coming from the town centre, trying to get to Sainsbury's.
Just one point with that, which I think is probably very relevant, is there's money, there's £50,000 come off tier 2 funding, which is basically about connecting up the park and ride Sainsbury's with the town centre.
Yeah.
So does that statement kind of fall more into the feasibility
Yeah.
study around that?
Probably. So yeah, I suppose there is going to be future works on how we develop. So even though we've got a network that's kind of north to south, there is the network how we develop that and getting people into the high street and kind of the main area of Kinross and the shopping area and so on as well. So that's a kind of being developed as a separate project. So that might be addressed a bit more as part of that. I suppose the one on Junction Road further south towards the park and ride, maybe it's thought that if we move that further up Junction Road to near the Sainsbury's access, that might be kind of a good middle ground to service both. That's something we can look into.
I think you need both, but Willie, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to actually get the perfect spot for a crossing, because people do come up Junction Road. I've often seen people they come out of Sainsbury's or Junction Road, and they're looking down Station Road, looking for vehicles coming from the east, and just keep going around the corner, which is quite scary, you know. Will these be? Sorry, will these be? You know, you get the ones that are cycling friendly. Can press and
Yeah. So that we would look to make them kind of, because they're connecting to the wider cycle network. So we would look to have them as two crossings for good cyclists as well. Yeah.
Okay, Daryl's got a question for you. This has consideration been given to signalising Station Road, Junction Road, Junction.
Yeah. So at the moment we haven't considered signalising the junction. That is something that would give you pedestrian crossings across all three arms.
I mean, I see everybody here. Are you all thinking the same as me that you do need that east-west to get to Sainsbury's as it stands? The only supermarket.
I don't know whether there's some useless traffic lights.
yeah, could we not get the ones that are?
We'll wait till they put in, Willie. We'll go at 4 AM.
I suppose, I mean, that's something we can consider. I suppose that it was not thought of, first of all, probably because of the disruption, the cost, and it's quite close to that nearby roundabout.
Okay.
It is something we can consider. I mean, if we think there's a real want and requirement for it, then we can hold off on what we do at that junction to figure that out a bit more, if you would like.
Yeah, put the traffic, put the crossings in.
If it's a crossing, it's when people are there and ready to cross. If it's a normal traffic light situation, my worry would be the amount of traffic coming in, and including coming down Springfield Road to get to Sainsbury's. You could build up onto the roundabout, which create havoc.
So again, what I might suggest is, as part of our active travel route to this town centre, if we consider the kind of the feasibility of a junction may be included within that route. And so the pedestrian crossing, if we install it as it is now, we'll install it so it's a way that can be retrofitted and then installed as part of a junction if it comes to that.
Okay, so if I take this a step back, I think everyone's approving what you've got here.
Yep.
Yes. Any objections to that? We're all approving what's on here.
Yes.
We're quite happy with the Springfield
I
Road.
wonder if we'd edge around the corner a wee bit to make it easier. If you're walking down on this side, the left-hand side, it'd be less to walk if it was on the curve of the circle. It wouldn't interrupt people coming. It wouldn't deter. It wouldn't be much of a detour for people coming on the path from the south, but it would make it a bit easier for the people coming down on the left-hand side of the path. Just a wee tweak,
Yeah.
Could I just add one more thing? There's been a call for a long time for a pavement on the west side of Springfield Road, from where it comes down from the motorway junction down to the park, to join in with it on that side, because it's quite difficult crossing there as well.
That's where there is traffic lights going in Springfield Road.
That's what
Traffic lights coming in there.
They're coming later with, they're going to resurface the Springfield Road, this end of it.
But it'd be quite good if there's a pavement actually put in the other side of the road as well, joining into the.
So I think as part of this, the thought was that the path network from the cross on the north kind of goes into kind of these quieter streets. And there's a path network that will come out onto the there's an existing island in the middle of the road on Springfield Road at the park. And so that would be the logical place to put another pedestrian crossing. And so if we can use these kind of quieter streets to get that link, and it's not that, it's quite a direct route, I would say.
Wilson, yeah, through Wilson. So you would cross that crossing. You were coming down the side of the Wimpy Houses or Braille line. You would use that crossing going in on Springfield Road.
Right.
You then go into Wilson Court.
Okay.
And there's the small path coming through Wilson Court, which brings you out just up from the crossing. So it was fair.
Yeah, I actually think Billy's point's well made from the pedestrian's point of view, because if you're walking towards Moto or Calder's Garden Centre, it means that you have to cross onto one side of the road, walk along, then cross the road again. And human nature is that people don't do that. They'll walk along the grass verge or they'll walk along the road. And I think the size of Kinross now, that should be a path on both sides of the road, given that the laurel bushes tend to cover half the path anyway on the other path. So
I think the problem there is the drop down to Davis Park. I don't know how they do that, but
I'd rather fall down the drop than get.
I mean, I think what I'm suggesting is that if you can come back with the plans to all local members, we'll circulate them to Kinross Community Council for feedback.
Yep.
And again, on Springfield Road, if you can look at that junction, get together some plans.
Yeah, I've got one more.
And also what Willie's point, is there any way we can get that either the path widened or the path on the other side?
And I think it's really good, brilliant that we're improving the connectivity for cyclists and pedestrians, but we still have the serious problem if you're going by bike, say to Bellado, you've got to cross that motorway junction.
Absolutely.
Is any way we could have actually bike crossings on both of the slip road, north slip road and the south slip road, coming off slip road on the M90 on the north side of the roundabout?
I mean, it's something we can look into.
I think we've asked Transport Scotland.
I think what I would say is, in terms of kind of going out further west, we're probably looking at kind of a separate project.
I know
I'm
just
saying that. I'm happy to take note and happy for us to look into it further. I suppose it's
just on that point, when Arup were doing their master plan for active travel, that was it was definitely in the Kinross version of that, dealing with how you get across the motorway, whatever way it is. And I don't know if that made it into, because Perthshire followed on, and then there was the project for Amalgamated, which is partly where this comes from.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that survived.
Okay. It'd be quite good if it running.
I'll take note. I'll look at the ARIP report that was done as well and try and pull that out and see if that's been carried through. So
perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
That might be something that could be built into one of the LPPs and ask for around that as well. So something to be considered.
So you got all that, Michael? Yep. Got enough there to keep you going. Any other questions or comments? There's been one.
This is just the first slide. There's loads of
But Daryl's made the comment that take into account the OST. Okay.
Yeah, I put a couple of questions into the chat box. It was as much questions that I sort of thought that the delegates around the table might be asking, and that was about, the first question was about the possibility of signalising the Station Road, Junction Road, signalising that whole junction. I think what Michael has shown there, which is the Tucan crossing, a push button pedestrian and cycle crossing on that northwest corner. The little blue line that's on the map, that's where he's altering the curb line. Now, he talked about tightening up the radius. By narrowing the junction and tightening the radius, you're narrowing the road, making it easier for pedestrians to cross the mouth of Junction Road, but you're also slowing the traffic down because they're not able to navigate it at the same speed. But I was very encouraged whenever Michael said that even if we go ahead and put in this Tucan crossing now, as is shown there, if we did come back later to look at signalising the junction, that crossing, I mean, we can retrofit that crossing into the wider signalisation and incorporate pedestrian phases all around the junction. So I think as a first step, this is a good proposal. We always have to provide a little bit of spacing between a junction and where we put in any signalised crossing. And that's to allow any driver coming out from the junction to complete their turn or their manoeuvre before they then sort of face or front onto the crossing. If we have the crossing too close to the start of the radius, the start of the curve, the driver is still coming out from the junction, they're still navigating the junction, and quite often they're still looking for the approaching traffic on their right hand side. They're not always looking forward, looking ahead to them. So we need to ensure there's a little bit of space between Junction Road and any signals that we put in on Station Road. A couple of other points in regards to a footway on the western side of Springfield Road. That has been discussed with elected members before. We're going back quite a few years. There's two issues for us there. One, the verge is very narrow, and there isn't land available within the road boundary. And then, as was pointed out there is a major difference in level. Now, that's not unsurmountable if we knew who the land belonged to, and it might be within PKC control. It's just not within our road boundary or our list of public roads. But we can certainly look at that and see if you thought there was benefit in that. But the construction costs are likely to be considerable because of that difference in level. The other thing was in relation to the circulatory traffic on the roundabout. I know we've had discussions in the past looking at that. There's a wide footway around the roundabout, but we also have a wide carriageway. So the actual road itself can accommodate 2 lanes of traffic and is probably wider than what is actually needed for the volume of traffic that circulates around the roundabout. So you could use some of that road space to provide a cycle facility or a cycle lane around it. The problem is the mouth of the junctions. The speed of traffic, you've got very long slip roads at Turfhills interchange, and the speed of traffic coming up the slip roads and emerging out onto the roundabout is a little higher than we would be comfortable with. You know, we'd be wary about introducing cyclists onto that at the moment. But again, it's not unsurmountable. Measures could be put in place to reduce the speed of traffic as you come up the slip road. You could actually reduce the visibility, so the driver has to approach the give-way line before they make the decision about coming out onto the roundabout. So it's good that these matters are being highlighted within the community, and there's still a concern about that, because that then provides us with projects in the future to look at. But we're very keen to progress with what is shown on the screen at the moment as the first step. It's clearly going to form part of a much longer project. Funding is in place for these signals. I'd messaged the councillors last week and we're saying about, I wasn't quite sure what the funding situation was, but there is funding available for this. There is funding in place for the crossing on Springfield Road, which will be put in whenever the road is closed for resurfacing in this upcoming financial year. So we're confident that we'll be able to deliver these projects. So that's encouraging. That's good news for everybody. Michael, is there anything I've missed out?
No, that sounds, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else around the table got any questions?
Yeah, Willie's got another one.
Sorry, I've got a question. Darryl, I think the points you've made are well made, but I would just say that people are using the cycling west over the motorway now. So I realise it. And I've done it many times, and I know that traffic's travelling really fast, coming off from the M90 and actually entering the M90.
Yes. So
I understand that, but it's used already by many cyclists to access the cycleways further west.
Yes, Drew.
Yeah, there are other options further down the M90 where you come up the deceleration lane and meet a set of traffic lights, and it stops you and it does control the traffic. And that junction is now heavily used by pedestrians. It would be used more with cyclists, and it's also a problem for our buses because of how busy that road is. There's no bus stop outside Motos or Calders. Garden centre, so you're having to actually drop people off onto grass verges or pick them up on grass verges, or actually having to turn into the garden centre or moto to drop them off if you feel that it's not safe, and it really isn't safe. So I think there is a whole piece of work that needs to be done to look at that whole western entrance into Kinross.
We can certainly speak to that.
Separate from this, but I think there's certainly an issue.
Road safety, was that LVP?
We can certainly speak to the public transport unit about identifying a location for the bus stop. Yeah. One of the things we had spoken with Transport Scotland about in the past was, again, looking at the volume of traffic coming off the slip road. Each of the slip roads are 2 lane. And we'd put forward a proposal if you narrowed it down to a single lane, So you're actually reducing, you're pinching in the point at which they meet the roundabout, and you're forcing the vehicle speeds down. It also reduces the width of the road for a pedestrian or cyclist to cross. Now, at that time, Transport Scotland were not receptive to the idea, but I think as part of this discussion, or leading on from this discussion, this would be a good opportunity to revisit that and see if we could reopen that conversation with them.
Okay, so that was the first slide. I agreed to lead on the road safety, and Richard's going to lead on the active travel, but we're sort of bouncing between the two. You want to take over now?
Yeah, just
we'll come back to the.
Yes, I'm sure Michael thought this was a slight prelude to the actual main slide. That's what we've done in the prelude. How much do we lose? But anyway, Michael, back to you.
Yeah, I suppose, could you go back one slide, please? Just before I move on to the actual proposals, just one more thing to add in is we are speaking with our road maintenance colleagues as well. They've got a project in to resurface Junction Road at the Sainsbury's kind of access. And so that's something that we'll include within this overall project and deliver at the same time. So there's a decent section basically between the signals there that is included and in the programme. So we'll make sure all that's done at the same time.
That needs to be done fairly soon. I mean, there was a pothole around, what, about a month ago? It must have been that deep, that wide. And because you get the buses coming through, as soon as you get it opens up slightly, it becomes lethal. So that needs to be done soon if possible.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
And then, yeah, if you're able to go ahead one slide, please. So this is proposal one. So this is a proposal that you may have seen in the past or something similar. So what was proposed in the past was this large shelter. It's kind of large structure that encompasses cycle parking on the back end and then also kind of an enlarged waiting area at the front. Now, when this has been taken forward, there has we found that it creates basically difficulties in the car park and leads to a loss of parking. By implementing the structure in here, and we want to keep the footway width 2 metres, we don't want to narrow it any less than that. It means then we're taking some space off of the live running lane in the car park. The live running lane has to be 6 metres to allow vehicles to reverse out of a space and then kind of go on their way. Okay. And so, as shown in this plan, this shelter shows that it reduces it to 5 metres here. And so we have to displace some of the disabled parking on, as you'll see on the right hand side. And then also it leaves us with a space opposite the shelter where it's very hard to know what to do with it. It's an awkward size. I did have a note there, it's kind of blocked off a little bit. We could look to put in a drop off point in there. But essentially what this proposal leads to is a loss of 10 standard parking bays, which is quite significant. It does provide a large shelter. There is other issues with that in terms of maintenance and procurement and so on. And so kind of from this design, we then thought we'd look into kind of alternatives that are maybe a bit easier to kind of develop that have less impact on parking. I suppose one thing that you'll see throughout all these proposals as well is there is kind of a theme. We're looking at putting some public space CCTV in here, some cycle parking kind of, and some maybe not shown on these proposals, but a bit more green space and kind of shrubbery and planters and so on to try and kind of make it a bit of a nicer environment as well and create that separation between vehicles and kind of the waiting areas. And so, yeah, this is proposal one that has been floating about for some number of years now. And if we're able to move on to the next slide, please. And so this is an alternative option we came up with. So this is a medium option. It's a bit unconventional. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to build out into the existing disabled bays and then relocate them to the right. So there is a loss of 5 standard parking bays. And what we're doing is the shelters would actually be adjacent or perpendicular to the road. So as normally you'll see, the shelters are in line with the road. To allow us to maximise the shelter space and have little impact or as little impact as possible on the parking, this is kind of the layout we're leaning towards, or the kind of the middle ground. So on here, there's kind of 2 large style shelters which will face into kind of the centre of that area, and that's where the kind of the totem screen with the live kind of updates of the buses will be. We've got a CCTV camera, and there are also the thoughts of we could have some kind of bench seating in that kind of large space in the middle, or kind of planters incorporated with seating, kind of anything we really would like to do with that space. So that's kind of the shelter area, and then just off to the right, you'll see kind of there's a bike shelter, and then also kind of what's called as a velo box. So the bike shelter will just be a standard bike shelter where people can get the bikes, padlock them, and then adjacent to that is a velo box. So it's kind of like a bread bin, and so this is to securely store your bike. We've got a couple of trials, one in Broxden, and then another one, I've forgotten the name, that's happening in and around Perth at the moment, where we use an app. So basically log in an app, unlock the shelter, book your slot, it unlocks the shelter, you put your bike in and then lock it again. And so we've finally got through some teething problems and it's working well. And so we're looking at kind of having that combination of some people that have their expensive bike and want to keep it in a kind of a secure cycle parking, but also kind of the quick and easy, more conventional bike shelter where if someone's running late for a bus, they can throw their bike in and padlock it and then away they go. So again, there is a loss of 5 parking spaces. I will caveat that and say the park and ride did used to have cycle lockers in the park and ride, which were vandalised. They did take up 4 spaces previously. So there is a net loss of 1 space if you're considering. So yeah, this is option 2. If anyone's got any thoughts, then
could I ask Michael if the normal bike parking will it be covered with CCTV?
Yes. So what our plan would be for the public space CCTV is what we'd have fixed cameras. So one looking at cycle parking, one on the shelters, and then we'd also have a pan and tilt so we can monitor stuff.
Perfect.
Around the park and ride.
I think coming first.
I was just going to say that's a loss of 5 parking spaces. You said, do we need as many disabled spaces? Because I go down regularly to that park and ride, and it's very rare you see more than a couple of disabled cars parked there. So is that a requirement, or is it something we can look at?
So there's a recommendation percentage of this disabled bays for the overall number of bays, and we're kind of at that cusp where it is at 0.5, whether you have that extra bay or don't have that extra bay.
Yeah, because the point is that a disabled bay probably takes two spaces.
Yeah,
I don't want to lose any more spaces than necessary because the park and ride is very busy. In fact, we might have to do something about that. Build a multi-story.
Yes. So I think the decision to remove a disabled bay and replace that with 2 standard bays, that's probably a decision for yourselves, right, whether you are happy to go down that route. So that's something we can discuss and kind of look at.
And I think the one thing with this too, because the shelters here are wider than the shelters there, it will be proper seats.
Yeah.
Or either bench seats or a mixture, so that when people are coming in for Crooked Heaven or something like that on the Glenfarne buses, and then they're waiting on the Ember bus in it's rubbish weather, they can actually go and have a proper seat rather than just leaning against one of these.
Will people be protected against the prevailing weather comes from the west and the southwest? Will they be protected?
Yeah.
Worse weather.
Better than it is now.
Yeah, I feel like there will be, because you'll have basically the shelters either side with just gaps at either end for people to come in and out. So I think all in all, you will be pretty protected. The shelters are quite large, and so if you're at the back of the shelter, I think there's very little chance of getting any sort of spray, no matter how bad the rain is.
But just one question: any thoughts on providing toilet facilities?
So it's
thank you very much. Because if we're talking about a transport hub where we're tying with Glenfarne, tying with Ember, people who are coming on Ember, villages through the Fossaway transport, there's nowhere to go unless you go into Sainsbury's. And same for your drivers. So there's absolutely nothing there. So we're talking about, do we lose a space to create another car park space? Why are we not looking at a toilet facility, or potentially?
Yeah, so I mean, we had kind of, there is a want for having more stuff in the park and ride. So whether that's kind of facilities for kind of example vending machines or kind of the Amazon lockers and toilets and so on. I suppose with the toilets, it's very difficult to get that. But there's a lot of work required in getting the toilets put into place, and it's also the maintenance of them. And I know there has kind of been maybe a step back from public toilets in other areas in recent years, and so it's probably something that would delay the project quite significantly. I know the nearest Scottish Water, we also looked into kind of the fresh water taps from Scottish Water, and the nearest connection for Scottish Water is a decent distance away up Junction Road. We're quite unfortunate that there's not much comes in past the park and ride in terms of public utilities. I think just the way the developments were created, that they kind of stop quite a bit shorter of the park and ride. So it has been a consideration that I think just the scale and the nature and the maintenance has just been something we're wanting to avoid at this stage, to be honest, to try and get something on the ground and delivered.
Certainly toilets are, you know, any of the councillors will know how much the toilets cost the council is on a whole, and we've been closing them down. The council have been closing them down all over because of the running costs of them too.
I think that's because facilities like that are designed by young continent men, and I think when you become older and are different, toilets are not a luxury, they are an absolute necessity, and they will stop you travelling if you don't have access to them. And there's no point in having a mobility hub if you don't have facilities like that. So you really need to have toilets. And all the other, you know, there's the mobility hub list, the Como UK stuff, and there's a list of stuff there that you should have in it. And it's things like toilets, refreshments, disabled parking, electric parking. Good, and I have to say I really like this, but I think that we're not being ambitious enough, and we could just go one step further. And you know, the wee wooded areas and things like that, you could quite easily. French ones where you just put a bit metal round a tree trunk or something. But think a wee bit using, and the other things is we've got these wee circular things where we've got trees. These could be taken away and made an extra couple of spaces if it was absolutely desperate. But I like what's in here. The Amazon lockers and a vending machine, and because we are now there's an absolutely superb bus service goes through that park and ride. We are now bringing people in from Tillicoultry and Dollar to get the Ember bus to wherever in Scotland. They're coming this way rather than that way to Stirling. But sometimes you miss your connection by 5 minutes and you've got 40 minutes away. A wee cafe around in Sainsbury's, but they don't, and the toilets are often closed because they're flooded. So
yeah, so I mean, I think honestly, I think the toilets are a difficult sell.
Absolutely, I'm not going to follow with you over toilets, but I just think that there should be something like future toilet marked on the plan.
So one thing we have,
absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, the good thing about this is as well is it doesn't take up too much of the existing footway kind of footprint. So it does leave you space to, if the cycle parking is kind of at capacity, to increase that. If there is lockers or anything else that comes on board, there is space to put them in.
With it like that, I could see that you could have a vending machine to one side of one, whatever, and further along one of the amps. So I think even if you put in electricity points, so you've already got the services in there, so that you can develop it when the work's getting started.
So that is something we're doing. So we've got electricity where the totem is at the moment.
Yeah,
basically we're upgrading that kind of cabinet so it can be future proofed. Because we'll have the CCTV, we'll have the shelters, we'll have better light in the totem, and it will be able to be kind of plugged into. I suppose one thing to note is that, so we have looked at speaking with other companies that offer kind of, so they offer something, for example, New World Payphone. So it's this kind of totem that has an advertising screen on the back, which they make money out of. However, they also provide a smart screen, which you can have maps, contact details, you can have a defibrillator, you can have Wi-Fi. And so we have had conversations with these companies. For some reason, their marketing says it's not viable at present. So what our intention is with the CCTV cameras is we can look at how we actually kind of record the usage and try and maybe make a better case for that. Because I think whatever they use to evaluate whether that's economically viable for them, I don't know if that's
It's getting
out of date or if we can help.
Getting stuff like that, branding, things like this is Kinross, this is what you can do in Kinross. You can get on these buses and go there and do that.
Yeah.
We've got the law. You know, just having a machine that people, we constantly last summer had people trying to get to the lavender farm. They had no clue how to get there. Just having that sort of information, where can I go for a cup of coffee? I've got an hour. Absolutely, where is the nearest toilet? Just lots of information. Touch a button and it says where are the toilet? Oh, it's just in the corner in Sainsbury's. That's something like that built in would be great.
Yeah,
I think we need to keep moving on this one, or else we're going to.
How many slides you got?
there's one more after this.
Want to just cover the last, unless there's any urgent questions on this option.
So yeah, we can move on to the next slide. So the next slide is kind of a compromise. So this is basically using the footprint of the footway with no loss of parking. And so essentially what it is just a replication of a larger shelter than that's there at the moment, but it's basically just 3 times that along the section of the footway. That can be constructed with one kind of continuous shelter. It's just obviously smaller than the other proposals, but it does mean that you have kind of no loss of parking. So this is kind of the compromise if losing parking was kind of a real no-go, and kind of this is the easy solution.
I'm just wondering, what's the capacity of these shelters? How many people?
Yeah, so these shelters here it's in square meters. So this is 15 square meters of shelter space. And the proposal you've seen was 20 square meters.
Okay, and how many people get into that?
That's a good friends they are.
Yeah, so these shelters shown on screen are the ones at the moment, and so yeah, it does depend how tight you pack in, but
no proper
yeah.
Oh, right. I think
Then this would just be a rail at the back of the shelters and kind of similar to what's there.
The reason I asked that is you can regularly see 30, 40 people down there in the morning waiting to get in the Edinburgh to Edinburgh or whatever. It's a really busy junction.
Yeah, I suppose our thought on proposal 2 was to kind of you have more shelter space, but also there will be, even if it's raining, people that just refuse to use the shelter, they'll never go in the shelter. They want to stand outside and vape or smoke or something like that. So the proposal before kind of provides that seating and kind of wider space.
Did you want a decision today from the committee?
So I think
well, it'd be good to have an opinion going from the committee to what's the preferred option.
If I go first, I would say it's a park and ride. Got to be allowing people to park. So that's my first priority. So I would go for option 3.
I think option 2 is far better.
Option. Can we just do who's rather than go everything? Who feels that option 1 is the best, or losing 10 spots is just a step too far? Yeah. Option 3, second. Councillors. Option 2, which gives the balance with a proper seated area in there.
I think option 2 is a step closer to the idea of a mobility hub.
I think that's the difference. If cars may be first in Europe, that this is about creating a mobility hub that benefits everybody travelling.
Speaking as one of the remote on the southern edge of Kinross, the completely not connected part of Kinross, the whole transport hub here is very Kinross centric. There's no connectivity to, for example, the Fife network that came into the bottom end of Perthshire at Fife's expense. There's no way of us from the villages getting up on a safe cycle. So we do need, if we want to use this car spaces to park, if we're coming from certainly from our side of the Kinross.
It would be the same from Scotland.
I think there's a bigger thing with buses, general buses. I think what we have is way better than what we've ever had. I think one of my comments would be, Broxton as well. So when you look at Fife and the bus infrastructure, Andrews bus station. You look at leaving Albeath ferry toll. There's huge upgrades, and they're imagining what the next generation is going to be. And I do find my colleagues quite unambitious. We're putting a lot of pressure. We're putting a lot of pressure on.
If I can come back on that though, this is.
If I finish, I'll let you come in next, Neil. No problem. Drew was first, but Broxton as well. I think we need to be a lot more ambitious for what we achieve. Just doing like for like, I feel, just misses that opportunity you have to build something that isn't just about car users, that is about people walking. If you can encourage people to take bikes, they're not taking a car. You know, if you can encourage people to walk, knowing they're getting sheltered, you're not taking a car. And it's about creating that mobility hub, which actually sits under the council strategy, with their mobility strategy. Do you think you were first in it?
Yeah, it was with my bus hat on, and many of you will know that in the last 6 months we ran a pilot project to do a demand responsive service. That is now suspended because we don't have funding for it anymore, but we do have funding applications in for funding from a number of places to resurrect that, and it's the TAC Trans and CES Trans, the Motability Fund. And the idea is that we would have 2 buses, same size as we have at the moment, and we would have one roughly operating around the park and ride, so that people could come off a bus and instead of getting into their car, they could get onto a waiting bus, which would serve some of the areas which don't have a bus service at the moment. You wouldn't be able to take it up to Glenfarg because there's a bus goes to Glenfarg, but you'd be able to take it to Cleash because there's no bus going to Cleash, or to Carnbow or whatever. It might be that if we had enough buses, we could expand on that. But certainly we would be hoping to provide some sort of service from the mobility hub to take people out, so that you weren't reliant on taking a car, because that car park's going to be full, especially in the summer season when people start going their holidays and leaving their car there for a week or 2 weeks. So there is a proposal that again there could be more mobility around it using bus.
Neil?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with your point about the ambition, and it is a sort of compromise. But comparing it with something like Holbeath, it's a huge site, and it's always had massive capacity built in. The viability of this site is very, very constrained, and the reality is, as much as I want to see uptake in active travel, the reality is the way the housing is going in this town, this this ward, is that I think the uptake and the success of the bus is going to be much quicker and faster than the uptake of localised active travel, particularly for the rural communities that are arguably more reliant on it. So I completely agree with you, Richard, about the need for the ambition. I completely support that. But the reality is the site is constrained, and that's where I see, if we lose sort of 5 spaces, it's only 5 spaces, but it's still,
I would sit and say to that is, if somebody's bringing a bike, it's a car less.
They are, but as I say, I think the expansion. I agree with that, and I agree. But I think
it's the idea. It's the whole mobility strategy, council strategy, and going forward, that we're moving away from a car-centric environment to try and encourage and create infrastructure to go forward. And if the 3 of you are adamant that it should just be about cars and not about that general overall.
It's not just about. I don't think it's about. I think it's not just about cars, but it's about the reality that the capacity of this. I think that the uptake of bike travel will be much slower, and I think the reality is if they build, for example, if that happens, they build on the BCA site, for example, that will suddenly put a huge amount of pressure on it, and the reality is people will still, for the foreseeable future. I think I think it's a balance. There's no right and wrong answer.
Just background here. I think there should, I think it's irrelevant what one you use. I think there's a piece of work needed to look at how you increase the parking.
No, I think that would be a sort of caveat there.
Relevant on any of the 3 options. There's a piece of work there, and there's 2 elements to that. The one element is that needs to get pushed, and this has been raised with officers. Is where do we find more car parking spaces, and the second one is the multi-day stay, and people who are parking and going on holiday for a week, and there needs to be some work to look at that as well, and that stuff's going on both in relation to here and in relation to Broxton as well within the council, and that will feed in. I don't, Dave.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think your ambition is correct. We should be ambitious. I think you've got your answer in terms of the votes here were 5 for option 2. So I guess we go with that. I think what I would say though is if we can keep it to losing 4 spaces rather than 5. And I think really when can you do it? Is it next week?
So I suppose that's where we want to steer, because basically, so the signals have been ordered, set on the shelf. We're almost ready to go. The main delay is the shelter. So we need to decide what shelters we want, get them ordered. And so we're looking at June time for the shelters being delivered. And so what we would look to do is we would look to have the construction done and ready for the shelters.
Okay, well this committee has the authority to deal with infrastructure, and I would suggest that you've got your votes from the representatives, members of this committee, so you progress with option 2. So we're in agreement? You agree with that, Rich? So.
No, I actually, and credit to Michael and the team there. I thought option 2 was a good compromise to get that. You know, I initially wanted option 1, well, proper bike storage. I felt was essential. We had you know, bike storage that was a mess. It was 4 years ago, I think it was actually taken out, and I thought actually coming up with that design, I thought it was a bit ingenious in there, and I thought the work that went in behind it was really, really good to create that more of a mobility hub, a more of that changeover.
I have to say I really like option 2.
And fair, you know, give credit to officers for coming up with this and all the other stuff around.
No, it is a good design. Can I say that? You know, it was just a sort of a concern over the loss of the spaces. I think it's a great design. Could we, and it's look at potentially bringing an option to look at the longer term capacity of it as a sort of caveat? In which case, I'd be happy to sort of say I'll support that. The second, I think it's a good design. I'm happy to sort of say that, but I am concerned about the capacity of it, and it's, you know, it's not a sort of car. Now, I'm a cyclist. I've got 2 bikes, but reality is, I feel that cars will, you know, catch up quicker. We'll get bitten in the bum, and there'll be cars everywhere, and so on. But how do we manage that in the short to medium term? Could we add that as a sort of takeaway as part of that? That'd be great. Thank you. I'm happy to support option 2.
Do we need a mapping update, or can we?
I've got a fair few other things I can whistle.
Well, if you want to whistle through, because we're running a bit.
Just to confirm, so option 2, and when you say loss of 4 spaces, is that looking at removing 1 disabled bay and looking to? Okay.
Well, you're going to have to move them around anyway.
Yeah.
The car park, but that's the decision of the committee. And when we do the minute, if we can actually incorporate option 2 in the minute so that people can see it, that's all right, Magda.
Yes, noted.
Thank you. Sorry. Is it safe?
Am I okay to just rattle through some of this other stuff? So Darrell touched on Springfield Road. We're also looking to do that this financial year coming up. Funding's in place, and so we'll come back with a date on that. There is also kind of footway works as part of the new Lathrow development at Persimmons. So there is at the moment, there's a non-material variation sitting with Persimmon Homes, and we're chasing that up basically to get this path network installed all the way up to the. And so we've got a meeting next week. It's next week on the 3rd of March. I think there's one with the farmer and Hillcrest that has some discussion on it further. So just giving you a heads up that's in hand. We're still pushing on, trying to push on with that. We've just got a bit of delay with Persimmons.
Can I just ask, non-material variation, is that one that's in place already, or they're putting forward a non-material?
So they're putting forward a non-material variation.
They couldn't do it to change the roundabout, the traffic lights into a roundabout at the same time. I'm just being facetious.
That's why I keep going.
Yeah. And then the mapping app, so there's a meeting next week to discuss that further. So we've had an inception meeting to discuss kind of what we'd like to see on that, and then that'll be taken kind of to the next steps next week, hopefully. The last thing I've got down here is obviously the junction outside. So it's just kind of a note that once that junction is fully in place and gets handed over, it will be myself and my team that kind of then look on after that, from that point forward. So if there is any issues, or if there's anything you'd like to speak about once the signals are in, any concerns or anything like that, then I'm happy to kind of answer any queries or look at anything we need to amend to maybe make things work a little bit better. as with any set of signals we put in anywhere, there is always kind of a short teething time just for things to bed in and us to get the detectors focused in the right way and so on. So yeah, anything at all, please just get in touch.
Be 20 years for these ones. Teething.
And then finally, the last thing is we have got a feasibility study getting delivered from the park and ride into Kinross High Street. And so as part of that, so this is for improved active travel route. As part of that, there's an options appraisal to taking it off route as well. As you'll know, Station Road, there's quite a bit of constraints when we get down to the park and narrowness kind of as you get closer to the high street. So what we're doing is we're looking at various different options and how we can maybe take it off of Station Road and use quieter streets and how that connects into the wider network. So that report will hopefully be completed at the end of March. We'll have a little bit of finalisation and then you can circulate that for kind of any thoughts as well.
Locals wouldn't use Station Roads. Locals would use Bruton Road to get this out of Kinross.
Yeah, yeah, I suppose from an active travel point of view.
Walking, yeah, absolutely.
Feasibility study will pick that stuff up, and I would hope elected members and community and this committee get the opportunity to put into that feasibility as well.
Yeah. Okay. Are we done?
Cool.
Yes,
we're done. So that item's finished. That's item 1. So you're welcome to stay, but I understand you might want to go home. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you very much.
I've been reminded by the being a useless chair, I've forgotten to read out the outstanding business statement. So I'll just go back to that if I may. Just to say that the items on the outstanding business statement are the average speed cameras, Darrell already covered, and the active travel map, which we've already had it covered as well. So are we all happy with those are marked as being complete?
Yep.
Yes. Now the next thing on the agenda.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Michael.
Is the
Okay,
Kinross-shire
thank you.
Thank you, Darrell. So the Kinross-shire flag is the next thing, but because the presenter on that won't be here till 6:15, we'll move on to the next item, which is the communities-led local development. I've got Sharon and David here to talk to us about. So,
We have some slides.
well, that's fine.
I don't know where they are, but with somebody.
Magda, you've got slides for the.
We have a bit of a Wikipedia of slides, but don't worry because we'll just guide you through what we are and what we're not, I think. And that would just to some ideas so we get the slides up.
Audrey's
Great.
going to put them on screen in a second.
Thanks very much. There we go. Okay, that's I'm David. I'm chair of LAG, and Sharon is beside me from the Kinross Council. And next slide, please. COVID. Right, here we go. Just the background. We are one of 20 groups right across Scotland. So there are 20 LAGs right across Scotland, and we are originally part of the LEADER network. The LEADER network was right across Europe. It still is right across Europe. We came out of Europe, so we became community-led local development. But we still apply the same principles. We haven't just thrown everything out. So we are part of now a Scottish government fund, and our fund is looked after, if you like. Our banker is Perth and Kinross Council. So every LAG has members of the group, and every LAG has a coordinator, paid coordinator who organises what we do, the projects and everything else. And we have an accountable body, which in our case is Perth and Kinross Council, who act as our banker. So the money comes from Scottish Government to Perth and Kinross, who look after it. It's not a Perth and Kinross fund, it's a LAG fund. So it's kind of important to remember. Move on. Let's move on. Next slide, please. We can circulate these slides for anybody who wants to see that. There we go. This is just a quick history of LEADER. LEADER started way back in 1991 and has gone through various iterations. We used to be part of Tayside LEADER, which was Angus and Perth and Kinross, and we decided to split into 2 different leaders. So we became Perth and Kinross LEADER, and then we left the EU but we managed to keep the lag operational. Several lags just stopped working and had to be re-recruited. We kept ours going. And so we were there, hit the ground running, community-led local development. As you'll see, budgets have increased 3.3 million, 11.6 million, and 9.6 million and 11.2 million. This is the overall budget. Next year it's 9.1 million. This is a chunk of the agriculture budget to be spent.
Can you explain what LAG stands for?
Local Action Group. Local Action Group.
What that means roughly, just to say.
Local Action Group are a group of
Independent and
public representatives. So it's independent, public sector and private sector representatives. So it might be the National Farmers Union. It might be the
college.
The college, go on.
There's all the business support agencies, so Business Gateway, there's GrowBiz. We have independent groups, so sometimes we'll have representatives like from community that's got a development trust. So we have about 19 in total, and it fits against a profile list that the Scottish Government requires to have, so that we have that cross-section of stakeholders and independent representation.
And in terms of what you do, you allocate funding? Is that the purpose behind it?
That's the second. Yeah, there's two parts.
Okay, so I'm probably jumping ahead of.
Well, I'll just explain that there's effectively, well, there's 4 parts, but essentially 2 parts, and that is we have the strategic lead for rural development. So that's about trying to make sure that rural representation ensures that we get access to funds to be able to further rural development. And we've chosen as a LAG to focus on having community action plans as the catalyst to be able to support communities to be able to take forward their rural development. And it focuses mainly on rural areas, as say Scone, Perth is excluded, and there's Pangles because they get their own fund. And we have set priorities. I'm jumping way ahead now.
That's okay, yeah.
We've got a set of priorities that we link all the way back to the UN Sustainability Goals. And then that filters down to the Scottish Government priorities, and then we can draw from that, which are the Perth and Kinross Council priorities. So there's that golden thread right the way down, and all the projects and the funding that's available has to respond to one of those priorities and deliver against that. What we have is a CLV, which is a community-led vision, which is a business plan for the fund. And if it doesn't, then it's not working.
So we don't just pull projects out of fresh air and say this is nice to have or nice to whatever. It must comply with this thread of constraints that we work under. And every LAG in Scotland works slightly differently. They have the same kind of constraints, although Perth and Kinross Council has a different set from Angus or from Highland. Every LAG works differently. We've taken a community action plan approach, not all others have, and I think it seems to be working quite well at the minute. Let's move on the slides if we can. To be at the next slide. That's great. Now all our 20 groups are now forming what's called a network, a proper network. There'll be one person to represent us, to have one voice of all the LAGs. And the network is joining what's called ELARD. ELARD is a collection of LAGs right across Europe, from Finland to Portugal. And interestingly, you've got Georgia over here, who's not part of Europe. And I think if you draw the map next year, you'll find Scotland is in blue. ELARD has huge resources and experience of people doing exactly what we're doing, but right across Europe. So it's really, really good to be part of that team. Just to let you know where it's kind of a wider vision. So let's have a next slide. There we go. So this is our, is that you? Is that the, go on.
So on the right hand side of this is obviously the Perth and Kinross priorities, and that links the corporate plan. Bit in the middle is the UN Sustainability Goals. And on the left hand side shows you how much money we've managed over and how many projects we've managed over the years under this fund. So around 186 projects and about 7.5 million. Is that 5 million? I should know that off the top of my head. And without we require match funding for all the projects. So that brings in, without this year's match funding in it, is around £11.8 million. So we look for that leverage. We also apply a social value engine, which is a social return on investment, which then brings in how that makes people feel and change and how that impacts them and benefits them. So we apply that as part of the monitoring, and the multiplier on that is huge for us because of the match funding and the types of projects that we fund. So that's the golden thread link.
Let's do the next slide.
Next slide, I think, is the Scottish Government priorities. Yeah. So these are the Scottish Government priorities. So you'll be able to see directly, these overlap directly with Perth and Kinross's. So it's very easy for us as a LAG to be able to align applications for different funds to the different priorities of Perth and Kinross.
Next slide then, please. Yeah.
So the Perth and Kinross Action Plan programme, it's born out of the need for managing the number of applications received, but also to make sure that communities, we don't get lots of different applications in different communities, because what funders find is that they start to reject all of them from one community because it shows they're not joined up. So if you get a community action plan, you see the priorities, the one voice, and you understand what the travel is in terms of the projects they're trying to achieve and which one they've got resources to deliver at any one time. So that's why I work for that. 27 communities across Perth and Kinross currently have one, and they're still being funded to do them. I heard somebody say they're just starting their LPP. We are funding top-ups of LPP because communities are choosing to do their community action plan, and before they do the LPP,
Did you notice they also have group line?
How we get that? That's how we get that.
We learned a lot from Nicola's feedback, which was great, actually. Yeah, so just moving on to that. Our fund is retrospective, and this is really, really important, and it's really, really difficult because it does mean that it puts a lot of pressure on communities to have a reserve in place in order to qualify for the money. And it also needs match funding. So that's the other caveat, which it feels like people are starting to be excluded, but it's because under Leader, we were the last funder to come to the table with everything. So it showed commitment, it showed that the community was ready and able to take things forward because they put a project plan in place, but also they're a constituted group. Our rules in our fund do allow for a little bit of upfront funding, but it's really, really difficult to get it out the door. So I can come back to that a different point.
Before you go on from that,
yeah.
This is one of the things that I'd heard, which is why I wanted you and David Stokoe's online as well. He's in charge of the CLD. He's I guess he's administering the fund. I don't know if that's the.
We're administering it.
David's tied into it. Your sound is turned off.
Sorry, do you want me to address that now?
Yeah, I think that'd be quite useful.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Is this the? I mean, I'm not here to speak for finance colleagues, and I was under the impression, Councillor Cuthbert, that Scott had spoke to you about some of the forward payment issues, but Sharon makes the point in the presentation that groups are, some groups do need that forward payment because they haven't got the reserves to draw on, and it is something that we do stress internally, that it is important that groups are supported. So, but not all of the, I suppose, financial rules and regulations help us with that, but it's something we do work hard to unpick.
Okay, I think we've got a question from Willie first.
This is really interesting, especially about local action plans. The Kinross have just done a local action plan. And one of the things in the local action plan was to preserve that there's a large brownfield site at the bottom of Kinross. They want that preserved for retail. It's currently got an application for housing on it. How do we, as a local authority, match what the people want in the local action plan to make sure that what they're actually asking for in the local action plan is delivered?
So those are the priorities. Treat the action plan like a community priority list, wish list. You then need the local place plan. So the local place plan is something that's additional. It can be done at the same time, but it's definitely down to the community to decide how they do it and when they do it. And the local place plan is the only piece of document that allows or encourages planners, they don't have to incorporate that into the, I think they have to give it consideration, but
They have to. If it's formally registered, they are legally obliged, and it is a material reason for an objection to a planning application. The rules.
Exactly. Our local expert on this.
I can answer Willie's point that we're converting the cap into a place plan. Perfect. And the draft is getting there. And we're using GIS for mapping all that kind of nonsense. And we will be seriously suggesting that we don't want housing on the last site in Kinross.
So,
okay. Yeah.
just briefly, I can tell you what a living local place plan means, because as part of LDP3. So this week, Perth and Kinross planners came down to visit one of our villages with me as the trust member and the CC to go through the sites that have been put into the local place plan for that village, and for us to give them an opportunity to explain the justification as to why the villagers wanted the houses built in that location and not in another one where a developer had come forward. And that's a living exercise that is happening now.
Good. But presumably you have to have your place plan in place before they come and do that.
You have to have a place plan formally registered by May this year for it to be taken into consideration.
No pressure. No, we're planning to approve it at the community council in April. That's the time scale.
Well, if you need any help.
Your name has already been given to me.
I'm just asking Glenfargo, they're curious to know how they think this year. I suggest you talk to Nicola, she's an expert. So for Neil, if you're
people learning.
In
fact, we've got lots of support from you.
The question was how do we do one and how quickly can we do it?
The local place plan or the community action?
Community action plan, we don't have anything, so from Glenfargo.
It really depends. It's a chicken and egg situation because you're up against a timescale. Ideally, you have a community action plan because that shows robustness on the community consultation, and it covers everything, transport to social housing to everything, even the environment in the preserve. So yes, exactly. Here's what it may be. So ideally, that's what you have in place, because you can then use that basis of the consultation in your local place plan, and you circumvent the time frame that you need to go out to consult again.
It's online. It's online.
So
you can access it online.
How quickly? It usually takes, I don't think you can do it any quicker than about 6 months for a community action plan. And then you have 28 days where you've got to have consultation with the wider community councils and then take into any consideration what the feedback is, and in order to build it into the final local place plan to submit it. So there's all these elements. Dante Sosa is the key person, but I would highly recommend, if you haven't got a community action plan in place, come and have a chat with us, because we can try and get funding.
I don't think there's too much of a time pressure on us, because I don't think there's too much happening in Glenfarg in the new. There aren't huge housing developments about to descend upon Glenfarg.
Yeah, the council can provide you with funding to do the community action plan, and then they'll look at the whole picture of the thing. It's not just housing. It was broad,
but not the local place plan.
I'm sure our last community council meeting we brought up that we really wanted to do a community action plan. So if we've got your email address, you'll be getting an email tomorrow asking how.
You would also I'd apply to Margaret with that.
Right.
Can we continue with
yes, let's crack on. Sorry, can I just jump in quickly on that point? I mean, Sharon's articulated the place plans far better than I can. It's the thing about the LDP, because I think what happens in my experience is council go out, they do local development plan, do the consultations, they all get signed off, and then as soon as it becomes real in somebody's community that some housing is going to go on, people then go, well, we didn't know anything about this, and council says, well, we've done the LDP, and I think maybe community councils are a bit more plugged into this as being consulted, but I think there is something for the council about how we engage people at an earlier stage in that process, so that there's proper discussions about what is appropriate and what isn't, and communities are cited on that, so it's not a surprise for people, because quite often they can kind of be a lot of discussion at the back end of this when the decisions have already been made. So I think Sharon's articulated the role that the place plans can play in that very well. So we would encourage you all to have community action plans and place plans.
Yeah, I mean, Nicola's been through that. I remember hearing issues like that. If we can carry on with the presentation at this point.
Just want to say a quick word about how projects are assessed, because I think that's important. When projects come in to community and local development, they're looked at by the coordinator and they're sort of sifted, and any things are ironed out, any difficulties are ironed out, then they're presented to the LAG members. And it's a whole application and a technical assessment that each.
Can you actually just give us an idea of a project that's gone through that process?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, how you go through it?
Well, projects come in in expressions of interest into projects applications. They get sifted, then they get put out to the LAG members for assessment, and we get a detailed application form and we get a technical assessment, and we have a grid, if you like, of about 15 parameters that we score each project on, and the parameters are related to the things we've just seen. So it's a very, very strict. We score a 0, 1, 2 or 3 for each parameter, and the scores are all rounded up for each person that's assessed the project, and we have an average of the marks that they've done. And then that is put out to all the LAG members. Not all LAG members assess all projects, but the projects must be assessed by a minimum number of members, and also the assessment must be private and public sector. It can't all be public sector, it can't all be private sector, it must be a complete mixture.
And there's no officers in the process.
No officers involved.
We don't influence anything.
No, this is the LAG. There's no recommendations come. They come straight to us. Here are the projects, do the assessment, do the work. So we sit down individually. It goes in, it goes back to you guys. You do a grid of not only the scores, but the comments that have come in from each LAG assessor, and that goes to a full LAG meeting, and the projects get discussed, and they either get approved or go away and resubmit it, or we can't take this project on. So it's an extremely robust process. It was built in, I think, when LEADER was LEADER, because it was European money. We were audited within an inch of our lives every year, not just locally, not just by Scottish government, and not just by Europe, but by the senior people in Europe, the auditors of the auditors, if you like. So it was a really robust process that we had to go through. So just to let you know what a LAG does in practical terms.
And they're all volunteers. There's not one paid person.
They're all volunteers. Some people do it as part of their role. So
It's the college or
Visit Scotland, for instance, the Visit Scotland person is on there because they're Visit Scotland. So they're paid, but they're not paid to do what we do, if you like. So it is a voluntary group.
That's very good. Are you finished with the presentation?
Not quite.
So we can move to questions when you're ready.
Right, okay, so keep going. If you can do another slide, please, that would be good. There we go. That's Community Action Plan Programme. These are community action plans we have.
Just to pick up on this slide, just so that you know, is the community action plans. Now we've got quite a number of them. We're looking at the themes across all of them to identify large amounts of money, so that we're talking to the Scottish Government about things that you're needing the money for to take forward your priorities. But also we're looking at the community wealth building. We already have a number of case studies where communities have taken forward a project and that actually becomes a community wealth building, because you're keeping the wealth local, you're shortening supply chain, you're using local businesses, you're anchoring more businesses in the community. So we're going to be doing a piece of work that identifies across the Perth and Kinross those community wealth building elements, so that we can build that in and hopefully being able to cost a number of these community action plans. So we do start to get an idea of the investment required to take everything forward.
At least the fossil at the top there.
There you go. We knew we were coming. Do the next slide, please, and the following slide. Just next slide quickly. It's a social value project. We do this process to work out what the social value is of every pound that goes in, and RPK is at the bottom of this. Now you'll see that we have leveraged a huge amount of money. Our social value isn't quite as high as some of the other lags, but we have leveraged considerably more cash than other lags have done.
And that's
So
because of the match funding.
that's the match funding.
Right.
So our impact is actually, I think we're probably the most impactful lag.
Yes, we're out of the 20 areas in Scotland, we consistently bring more money than other areas, and that's because we take the view that community groups can actually access a heck of a lot more money than the public sector can, and it's a simple knowledge, and so therefore that's why we have the match funding in place.
And that's what you get at the end. So next slide, we're almost there. Sorry, we'll get there. As the project supported 2017 to 2026, we should have added Kythe on there. You'll know about.
Who's on our lag member?
They're a lag member as well. And Milnerthorpe is there, and there's also a community action plan
planned in the budget like Milnerthorpe.
In the budget for Milnerthorpe. So that's the sort of thing we've done in this area of all the projects. So next slide.
This is just quickly, that shows Upshurada, but they did it slightly differently, and then they came up with lots of working groups as well. So not only did the community action plan, very similar to Nicola, came up with some working groups to actually fast track straight into. Next slide, please. This one, we funded the Crannog Centre, as most of you will be familiar with that. The reason why I put this on here is because of the Community Wales building. They've got every aspect covered. They do skills, they're becoming a centre for rural skills and development. They support young people who can't get on with being in school. Everything, enterprise, the whole works, and that's what their tree is about. But the most important thing is they're being recognised by the Scottish Government and the European Parliament as being the Community Wealth Building and links within Europe to be able to lever in even more money from those areas because of the way that they go. Next slide, please. Fine, I think this is the final one.
Yes. No.
So this one is a project that's up at Rannoch, and this is about rural care. The community came up with the initiative because there's so few people being able to put care into the community up there. So the big companies down in Perth won't travel to Rannoch to provide care. So they decided they're going to set up a social enterprise with a hub and spoke approach. So they have Rannoch Trust, Dunkeld and Burnham and other organisations. So they blend the befriending care and at-home care with this social enterprise so that they can bring in the self-directed care elements of it. Working really well. It's hitting the tick boxes with Community Wealth Building, the European Parliament and across Scotland, and Scottish Government's looking to scale the model across Scotland, and that's happening in Perth and Kinross as we speak. And the final slide, if you can move on one more, please. So it's a rural economy support. So right the way through our programme, we're the only remaining lag that supports rural businesses, and we will, up to £30,000 match funding. We encourage small micro businesses and farm diversification still to come to us for the funding, and that's because of the rurality of Perth and Kinross. But most importantly as well, we have GrowBiz and we have the Smart Village project and the Ruractive. Ruractive is another European project, one of the very few areas in Scotland that has got a European link and is drawing money through the Ruractive, and that's funding 3 projects, also working with the Hutton Institute. There's loads and loads of stuff happening.
Just to finish off, we were chosen out of all the 20 lags in Scotland to go and present some of this to the 9 government rural teams in Edinburgh. And then we were asked to present at a workshop at the Rural Parliament, European Rural Parliament, which was in Inverurie. So we all went up there for 3 weeks for a day. It was a 3-day event. There were countries from all over Europe and a few more. And it was great to be able to put Perth and Kinross on the map.
Absolutely.
And we're also being asked to take some of this to a conference next month in Edinburgh as
Community Wealth
Building Conference, so we'll be able to illustrate some of these projects. So Perth and Kinross is punching above its weight, I think, in terms of what we're doing here.
Pretty good. Good. Thank you. Question, Richard.
From your social return SROI on investment, when you're measuring that, you're kind of, are you just measuring it with the extra actual hard cash you can bring in? Or is your SROI is it measuring the savings to the health service if you're, you know, the example you gave with the social care stuff, what's the savings to the NHS? What's the, if it's active travel, what's the savings and well-being and all the other measurements you can have? Or is it just purely that extra capital?
The social value is usually what the impact it is on people. And so therefore, whilst we're able to put a figure on how much that would be if you weren't having to fund extra support from health service, for example, every single one has a different proxy. So we're using the social value engine to do that. And that's backed up by thousands of studies, and we select various proxies for different things. I think I'd have to choose one project in order to walk you through it, so we can show you exactly what it is and the value. But this is something that we've used as wider external funding team. We used it to monitor the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, No One Left Behind, and CLLD to see what the social return on investment was for all of these. And it's showing really interesting figures. And now the Fairer Futures and the whole family wellbeing teams are wanting to use the same model to be able to reflect that. So you might start to see it in other areas.
I know DACTRAN are having a look at it as well.
Oh, okay.
They're looking at it from the travel, like rentals and stuff like that, to see what is the actual value of this investment we're putting in. Coming out.
And you can come up with a value every single project, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any other question? I asked David, just in terms of the retrospective funding, that can be an issue for community councils, obviously, because they're only allowed really to hold £700. So are there any other funds or funding extra available that are similar to this? So I don't know if David's got access to any, or
yeah, there's loads.
Yeah, there is.
We run the Grant Finder, which is a search engine for all grants for these types of things. Just contact us with what you're looking for money for. We support over 30 requests, but we have a bank of about 100 projects that we're constantly looking for funds for, and we fire off information on a daily basis to loads of people, trying to tailor the search to what they're looking for. So yes, there's absolutely, Nicole testified, there's loads of funding out there for community groups to access.
I would say lottery funding is not retrospective, and they run a fantastic awards for all, which we have currently funded. And unlike some of the restrictions you have, they will pay up front. They gave us, they are funding our development officer, freelance development officer, so they will fund staff costs as well, which you'd find challenging this year. That's capital. And so awards for all is a great starter. That's your introduction to lottery funding. And then you go into their bigger community funds, or as we're heading into heritage funding now.
Yeah. The paradox is that community councils just require basically a loan until the grant comes in. You know, they've got expenditure now and no money, but they don't. You don't need the lottery funding. What you need is the cash up front to pay the bills, so you can then put the grant form in. You know, it's this backward nonsense that we eventually got the council to give us the money up front, and it was fine. But
it is very
if other community councils face the same issue, they're going to have the same problem.
It is very restrictive. We actually had a donor-directed fund given us a value of an unrestricted fund to enable us to move forward with the projects that you were funding, because we didn't have unrestricted funding in our bank account. It was all linked to a grant for a specific project, and we are legally not allowed to use that to spend to buy the notice boards. We were very fortunate that our Rumbling Bridge Hydro gave us a donor-directed fund, which is of an unrestricted fund, and that gives us the money in the bank to just pay and then get the money back from you.
It's one of those things that we can't overcome right now. I think it needs to. I think the idea of almost like a loan for and for people to pay out and then get that money back. But even when you do get it up front, we were still badgering Margaret. For all the receipts and everything, so they can demonstrate the evidence. And it's one of those things. It's an industry when it comes down to evidence and performance and everything. But that side, we fund hundreds and hundreds of groups, and they lever in so much money. It's unbelievable, and hats off to all the volunteers that do it. Honestly, the amount of money that they bring into Perth and Kinross Council to take these projects forward in their community action plans is just phenomenal. It's really brilliant.
Well, all the CC members here are involved in that sort of thing. So are there any more questions or?
Could actually make a statement here that's maybe a bit contentious.
Go for it.
Community action plans and this side of things, I would separate it from the community councils. We could only take this forward in Fossaway because we separated it from the community council, and that's why we set up the development trust.
Well, there was an action group, which still theoretically exists, but we were the grant applicant because therefore we theoretically had access to the money because they were constituted.
Yes.
But yeah, I wasn't in the community council when it started, but there's plenty of different ways to do it. But I hear what you're saying. But
We were community council and we were just, we swapped over to trust now.
yeah,
Maybe we need a Kinross-shire trust.
I think you do. I mean, I was going to talk a little bit about it in my presentation.
I think if we're finished questions, thank you very much for coming. And thank you, David, for being online. I do appreciate it. We'll move on to the next topic. And basically what I'm going to do is you're welcome to stay if you want, but you're welcome to go. I'm going to go back to the flag, the Kinross-shire flag, because I think we've got Philip Tibbetts online. Now, I don't know if you can speak or not.
Yep. Yeah, I think we've got Philip, if you can hear us on the...
You had to press *6, is it, on his phone?
Yeah, we had a problem with the Teams link was going to the public link, so we joined by phone. Excellent. And have you got the presentation there, Magda?
Hello, can you all hear me?
We can, yes, thank you very much.
Ah, excellent. Glad to have joined you, albeit in such an ethereal form.
Thanks very much. Yeah, sorry about the technological areas. Have you got the slides, Magda?
Yeah, just give us a second.
All right, cool.
Quite a lot of slides tonight.
Sorry, yeah.
More than usual.
Excellent.
Struggle to get the end of the
Happy for a kick off?
Yeah, you lead on it, it's fine.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Davina. So, thanks very much for having this item on the agenda. We've just got it's quite a short slot, just sort of five or so minutes. And this is really just to talk about the possibility of a competition for a community flag for Kinross-shire. I'm delighted to be joined today by Philip Tibbetts, who is first and foremost a flag enthusiast, but also a community flag champion and now one of the leading experts on flags in Scotland and is the honorary vexillologist to the Lion Court. Just to sort of show these two pictures I put up here, the one on the right was just a photograph that was released yesterday from Moray Council, and this was actually they unveiled the county flag for Moray in 2023, but yesterday was the day that they got the sort of final legal patent. So it was just a nice timely reminder that there are quite a few communities who are adopting community flags. Next slide, please, Magda or Audrey. So I'm just going to say a few things, and then I'm going to hand over to Philip, who's going to talk a little bit about the what a community flag is, and also reflecting on some of his experiences and what the kind of process for a public competition is today. So the reason I wanted to bring this to the committee is I think it very much falls in with the remit of the committee, and it was an idea that was passed on to me by Mike Barnacle when he was one of the founding, former councillor Michael Barnacle, one of the founding members of the Kinross-shire committee. And I think it very much sits in with three of the areas of the Kinross-shire committee, which is around local measures to support and promote economic activity, to promote tourism, and also to promote initiatives for heritage and history. So I think that the reason for today is to kind of update on the proposals for a flag, and we're at the stage of doing a survey to try and gauge the level of interest in terms of the flag, and then hopefully we'll come across I suppose that what we're trying to convey is a key takeaway about this. This is about local identity, heritage and positive place branding, and a flag is owned by the people of Kinross-shire, helping to boost tourism and creating a sense of place. So as I say, we've got an information page at the moment which is live, and a survey. But on that note, if I could move to the next slide and hand over to Philip, who's got a lot more experience of it, and hopefully we'll be able to share a few insights and also give a bit answer any sort of questions you have. So Philip, over to you.
Thank you very much, Neil. So the first thing I should probably explain to everyone is exactly what a community flag is, because you're all sensible looking people. You quite rightly think a flag is a flag is a flag. So obviously there's this lovely slide showing the community flags for counties and islands, but I need to tell you what exactly is a community flag. And the example that I would draw your attention to would be, in Scotland, we of course have the saltire and the lion rampant. One of these is a community flag, the other is what we would call a flag of authority. The two flags historically are used together, but in different ways for different reasons. So the flag of authority, as its name implies, is used by, effectively, in the case of Scotland, the Crown, but other organisations can have such things as well. And you don't want lots of people using that flag because it's the flag of the authority. You don't want to sort of duplicate that flag and have people using that flag incorrectly. I will say in brackets at this point, I'm not going to go down to Hampden Park on match day and tell 50,000 people if they're using the wrong flag or not. But what you have with the saltire is a community flag. So a community flag is a flag that is absolutely free for people to use. There's no legal restriction on it. And everyone can use it to express their allegiance to effectively the same entity that the flag of authority is showing. The reason that I bring this up is obviously a number of these flags here. So you can see Caithness there, you can see Sutherland, Murray, as Neil mentioned earlier. These were all places, or are all places, that had a council with civic arms, and the civic arms could become, of course, like the Lion Rampant, a banner of arms. However, that would effectively be the flag of authority. So what this flag provides is a legal way for the inhabitants of the community to fly something that they can express their heritage and history and identity with in a free and legal way. So next slide, please. I should probably mention that analogy is something that should be borne in mind for Kinross-shire, because of course Kinross-shire had a civic coat of arms itself. The flag version of that would be the flag of authority. So this Kinross-shire flag would be providing the community of the county with something that they could legally fly. So I can leave you to read what's on here. I'm not going to just read over that. What I will say is, from my experience of dealing with all these counties and islands and towns across Scotland, is there are three main reasons why a community goes ahead with this. And to be honest, each community is different. Each community is probably a blend in different ratios of the three things that I'm going to describe. So the first is a sort of an internal benefit, and this is the most obvious one. A community flag is often desired because it's something that it gives the community this way of expressing its heritage and its identity, and it builds the civic pride that is usually already quite strong in that place. And in that sense, I would use perhaps Barra or some of the other Outer Hebridean flags as examples of that, where these were islands with great strong local identity, and a flag was just a way of being able to visually symbolize that so that everyone felt part of that same community. And if you go to places like Barra, or if you go to places like South Uist, you will see the flag being flown quite commonly round the island, and even being used by local sort of local commerce. Certainly if you go into the sort of the shop in Barra, they mark all the local Barra produce with the Barra flag as a way of sort of identifying for locals, buy this and you're supporting the local economy, which is really nice to see. The second main reason that a community might look at something like this is the external benefit. This is a flag is effectively a form of free branding that raises awareness of your community across the entire nation and indeed internationally potentially as well. One of the best examples for why a community really pushed for this was Caithness. You can see Caithness as the top and the third photo here, because they wanted to do it because they saw another flag really doing this well, which was Orkney. They had so many cars coming through Caithness with Orkney flags, they thought, you know what, it's making us super aware of Orkney. Why don't we get a Caithness flag? And that way we will get sort of Caithness sort of advertised almost for free by people sticking it on their cars driving around the country. And they've done a great job with that. Almost, within the first year of the Caithness flag being brought out, it was being used by the Visit Caithness branding. It was being used by their sports teams to represent the county when they were outside the county. So that's done really good work in that respect. And I suppose finally, there's also a national reason why some places are interested in this, and this is very much the reason that I am interested in doing this. We think of our nation as a patchwork of the local communities and the local identities and traditions all around the country. And flags are one way of reinforcing each of those patches. And in that sense, it's a lot like tartan. Tartan is fantastic because it's not just one design, it's an ecosystem of hundreds, thousands. These community flags are helping to build up, as you saw with that map graphic on the previous couple of slides, they help sort of reinforce this idea of the local identities and the customs and traditions around the nation as well. So that's very much why I and the Lion Court are really keen on that. So next slide, please. Hello?
Did that come through, Philip? We can see the next slide.
Oh, can you? Right, I can't see it just yet, so I assume I've got a little bit of lag. So I will continue knowing that you can see it. So the Lion Court is obviously the legal authority in Scotland for all heraldic symbols and flags. But we have built up a process over the last 10 years to be able to empower local communities to have a hand in developing the symbol that will represent them. Now, this process, as outlined on this slide, is fairly top level because we try and tailor the process as much as possible for each community, because we recognise that a one-size-fits-all process just doesn't work across all of Scotland. So the first step is establishing a steering group, and that allows us to helps us from the Lion Court, allow us to tailor the process, give you the options to say what would be the most relevant and appropriate way of doing this in your local community that's still going to meet those legal requirements that we're after.
Philip, can I just interrupt?
Yes.
I think we're going to have to speed this up a little bit because we've got a couple more items to go. So if you could sort of bring it to conclusion so we can move on, possibly.
That's fine. That's fine. I won't go through each of the steps other than just to say, this is whilst it's a tailored process, this is something that has been done for over 10 years in sort of 20 or 30 different communities across Scotland now. So it's very well established, and we've had a lot of success with it. So you can move on to the next slide, and I think Neil will then wrap up for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think, obviously a bit short of time, but I think I think we've got a good case for Kinross to have a community flag. There's a strong, obviously, historic county identity, and obviously acknowledging Glenfarg being both within Perthshire and also part of the Kinross-shire ward. There's often been a lot of challenge, but recently when they've tried to draw the boundaries that cut through Kinross-shire, both in the last Westminster boundary review and also the local council boundary, and it was the most objected to, I think, of all across Scotland. It's a great opportunity, I think, to engage with schools. So a huge part of this is engagement with schools and communities and getting them to sort of come forward with ideas. And a number of the designs, although there's balances and quality processes and checks, a lot of times it is school pupils that put forward the ideas that are ultimately successful. And I think ultimately, it's about place branding and can boost business and tourism. And yes, there's a small investment in terms of the legal costs, around £1,800, but it does become a very low cost, high visibility asset, I think, for the community. And yeah, I think on that, that's more or less everything I wanted to say at the moment.
Any question? Yes, David.
I would have thought the first stage is to establish whether there's a demand or people actually want a flag, rather than setting up a group and deciding there's going to be one. And all the people I speak to say, why do we need a flag?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what we did. And that's
How many people have responded to the online thing?
Yeah, we've had,
as a proportion of the population.
Yeah, well,
it's so negligible.
Well, we've had 70 people so far. But again, it's we put the idea forward, and there was a bit of strong views both ways, and that's why we said, right, let's do a bit of a survey to see if there's enough momentum to get it going. So it's a very fair question. It's what we did. Yeah.
Okay, look, I'm really conscious of the time.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Philip.
And thank you, Philip, for coming along.
Thanks very much, guys. Bye.
Cheers.
I'm conscious we've got the development trust here, but can we skip just to the next? Because there's somebody online that's hanging around since we started. So if I can pass over to Richard, he's going to introduce the landscape enterprise network.
Hi Hannah, hi again, second time today. Hannah's climate change team. She's land restoration officer and does a lot of work with lots of land restoration projects throughout the whole council area. But she's the lead officer for the Lens project, which is based around Lochleven. Over to you, Hannah.
Thank you. I've got some slides. It should be around 10 minutes, so that will leave a wee bit of time for questions, or I don't know if the first way.
You'll have to be quicker than that. You've got
I'll run through it as fast as I can.
7 minutes.
So if you haven't heard, sorry, next slide, please. So the Lens is basically a collaborative programme designed to help improve the landscape, water, environment and biodiversity across the Leven catchment. So in simple terms, it's a way for farmers, local organisations and funders to work together on practical projects that benefit the environment. So this is things like reducing nutrient runoff, creating habitats, improving soil health and also building resilience to climate change. And the structure of the programme is intentionally collaborative. So rather than funders working in isolation, the Lens programme encourages co-investment that maximises environmental and economic benefits across the region. So locally, the programme is coordinated by the Forth Rivers Trust to provide the on-the-ground support and knowledge of the catchment, and the overall Lens model is supported by Freekeel, who have created this Lens approach and run similar programmes across the UK and Europe. So they essentially provide the structured tools and monitoring framework behind the whole initiative. So together, the local expertise from Forth Rivers Trust and the wider Lens system from Freekeel help to bring in funding, match it to the right farms and make sure the work creates real environmental improvements. Next slide, please. So this is just a slide to talk about the nature and climate emergencies that we're all facing. So farmers in the Leven catchment are also facing these increasing pressures that the Lens is designed to address. So there's more frequent extreme rainfall, but also periods of drought and temperature fluctuations, which can reduce yields and increase risk. There can be nutrient depleted, eroded and compacted soils, which reduce productivity, increase runoff and worsen flood risk. There's also rising input costs with regards to fertiliser and pesticide prices, which also place financial strain on farms. We're all quite aware of the really bad biodiversity loss that we're facing with declines in pollinators, farmland birds and aquatic species. You'll be well aware of the sediment runoff that's impacting Lochleven and also local flooding issues in South Kinross as well. So essentially this is where the Lens steps in to put in practical measures such as cover crops, hedgerows and reducing synthetic inputs to help farmers overcome financial and operational barriers through shared investment and technical support. Next slide, please. So this is just to show the Lens reach across Europe. So it's brought in over 30 million in farm-based environmental improvements for farms since 2021. So there's 3 projects in Scotland, including the Tweed and Spey as well. And I think this figure just shows the potential for what Leven Lens could become. It's only entering its 2nd year now. Next slide, please. So the Lens itself is really invested in regenerative agriculture within the Leven catchment. So big funders like Diageo are specifically interested in this because of the raw materials used in their supply chain are sourced from local farms. So they really want to support this. And essentially this is all about improving soil structure, reducing synthetic inputs, increasing biodiversity and improving water retention and runoff. So you'll see the impact areas and KPIs that is measured through the Lens, and I thought a really important one to mention was also farmer well-being. So the Lens itself is helping farmers respond to these challenges that I've mentioned and help build resilience and also a shared sense of purpose across the catchment. Next slide, please. So as a funding partner, essentially the way it was set up, we sat down with Forth Rivers Trust and we established a detailed set of eligibility criteria, including targeting areas contributing to the greatest nutrient loads, as well as giving priority to farms that could deliver for biodiversity, carbon sequestration, flood alleviation and nature networks delivery. So the Leaving catchment obviously covers part of Fife as well. So there was 10 farms funded with 5 in PKC, and 4 out of the 5 farms met our specific PKC criteria, and the 5th farm was fully funded by Diageo. These farms were located along the Gurney Water, Greensburn, Southquake and Killickburn. And the sort of measures that we were funded was autumn cover crops, wildflower strips in fields, hedgerow planting and tree planting. Next slide, please. So LEN's participation is expected to increase significantly as more funders and more farmers join in future trades. We're obviously only just coming to the end of year 1. And basically the co-funding model makes environmental improvements more cost effective for all partners. So you would have seen there that we are funding 4 initiatives, but Diageo would have been part funding part of those as well. Next slide, please. So this is just showing the sort of investment landscape from 2025 to 2027 across all of the Scottish LENs. And you'll see it is jumping up significantly. So SSEN's looking to join the trade in 2026 with a specific interest in tree planting within the PKC section of the Leaving catchment. So again, this is strengthening the long-term financial base for landscape scale restoration. Next slide, please. I just wanted to speak a little bit why PKC got involved in funding the LENs, because when we look at the challenges facing the Leaving catchment, the LENs initiative aligns really well with our priorities at PKC, and it helps to close the gap between the scale of the climate and biodiversity action we know is needed, and also the level of public funding able to deliver it. And we know that phosphorus inputs into Loch Leaving remain a long-standing issue, and that tackling it requires new scalable tools that can work across the entire catchment rather than isolated projects. And another big issue for us is we have limited direct influence over land management decisions. We don't have the relationship that the sort of fisheries boards have. So LENS helps overcome that by bringing these farmers, funders and partners together as well. And just to sort of finish off with this slide, land use and agriculture are also like a major part of PKC's carbon footprint. So meaningful progress requires that collaboration that goes well beyond just council-led projects, and LENS gives the structure to do that as well, to work with the people managing the land every day and to deliver outcomes that matter for climate and biodiversity. Next slide, please. So yeah, just to speak a little bit about the co-funding again, instead of relying solely on council budgets or competitive grant funding, the LENS let us lever in additional money from partners like Diageo and soon SSEN to co-fund the same measures, and it just makes every pound of PKC investment go further. It also aligns with our Nature Networks framework, and it's really good to have Forth Rivers Trust as the local expertise and to have that day-to-day presence in the catchment to deliver this work effectively. And also just the framework from Freekeel that has, you know, the robust monitoring and quantified impacts. It gives us the confidence that the measures funded are real and delivering value for money. Next slide, please. So we are just, Forth Rivers Trust are just finalising the 2026 trade design and contracting participating farms, and they'll begin to deliver these funded measures. We've not got the report back from Trade 1 yet, so the monitoring and verification should all have been taking place and the report's just been written up, so we will receive this around April time this year. And that's me just finished.
Thanks very much, Hannah. Thanks for this. Any question, Willie?
Right. Thanks, Hannah. That was very interesting. You managed to fly through it, which is really good. Hannah, I have to say I'm rather disillusioned now about our efforts to protect things like Loch Leaving, given that in the last local development plan there was a special agreement that would limit the amount of housing in this area to protect Loch Leaving from even more phosphorus going into the loch. But when push came to shove, developers applied for far more housing on the sites that were allocated, refused by the council and then granted it appeal. So the policy that was actually agreed with the council and the community were completely ridden over.
Maybe that's a question for our LDP people rather than.
No, but I mean, it's about protecting our natural environment. And I was just going to say, if you've got any influence at all going forward, I'd be pleased if you make that point. Thank you.
Thanks.
I've been to give that kind of question up here.
Happy to do that, yeah.
Perfect, perfect.
Then you'd be up.
Any other questions regarding the Lens project?
Sorry, Hannah, that was really pressurised for you.
It's all right.
Thanks, Hannah. Thanks for everything. Cheers.
You handed that at me now. Right, well, we've got a bit of a conundrum here. We've got 5 minutes. We've got the Fossaway Development Trust who've come along and sat through the meeting. We've got an update on the Taste City deal and the Kinross-shire Committee Finance update from Kirsty, who's been sat here all evening. And we've got Sustainability Group Community Benefits from Neil on the agenda. Now, my question really is, you guys from the Community Development Trust, do you want to come back to the next meeting rather than try and squeeze it in?
Would you get some written updates of the other ones, which are all supposed to be verbal updates? Maybe they could send them an email round and we could get Fossaway Development Trust now.
Kirsty's already offered to do that. I was really going to ask you.
We can give you a flavour, and if you want more, tell us some specifics, and then we'll come back a second time. Or we can organise with some of you just a separate meeting with those that want to follow up with me. Yeah. Okay, if I give you a flavour, then you can make a judgment call as to who else would like to come to meeting with us.
That's great. Go for it.
Okay, I've got slides, believe it or not. Don't worry, I will whistle through them.
Nicola, just take your time.
So just to give you a little bit of a history then. So Sarah and I are now solely representing the Fossaway Community Development Trust. We wore two hats. We were the Community Council and the Trust. The Trust has been formed just under 3 years. 2023 it was formed. And the reason was that we felt there were lots of things that came to Community Council which needed fundraising, big money, not a little bit. And it was a challenge for us to raise that money as a Community Council. So we thought, we'll form a trust. We weren't quite sure whether or not it was goer or not, so we kept our foot in both camps until last year, because our trust, we feel, is now being very successful. That's who we are. We are a registered charity, and we are registered with Companies House as a limited company. So you want to move on to the next slide. And what have we done to date? Well, we have produced a community action plan, and we are one of 3 registered local place plans with PKC. We have also produced income generating, tick that box for you, a Fossaway walking and cycle routes active travel plan. Okay, that we partnered with Active Dollar and Muckett because it borders into theirs. We then seek donations of this for £2 to generate an income for us. Our third one that we've been very successful, thanks to PKC, is the donation of a community bus. We are, as we truly really grateful to Glenfarg for the number 23 bus, but our community is very diversely spread around. We wanted to ensure that we can get all of our very remote residents to our village halls to be part of our activities that we're running. The community bus has a grant. It was donated to us. We achieved a grant from the Rumbling Bridge Hydro to run it and all the expenses that you have in year 1. And we have had donations since starting it running last July of about just over £800. We hope to be fully financially self-sufficient in about 18 months' time. We now have our driver logos and our T-shirts. And so we are now at the cusp of taking forward bigger projects. We are also undergoing DTAS registration. That is a very long process because Development Trust Association Scotland. It's like a kite brand for trusts, basically. They audit you. So we've had to produce an awful lot of policies, a strategy, as well as our community action plan, financial control statements, equality, diversity, all of the great things. And that's taken us quite a bit, as volunteers, quite a bit of writing. We've done that. We have also just heard today, we're now an active member of the Scottish Charity Voluntary Organisations. We went to their first conference a couple of weeks ago. So that's who we are and that's where we are. If you go on next slide, what is our big project that we are seeking funding for this year? One of the key themes that came out of our community action plan is, like everybody else around here, is that drive to celebrate our heritage that we have and our environment. We want to improve developing the local paths and networks. Sarah is going to be leading on the local paths group. We already worked with PKC and a range around that, but we also want to promote our local heritage. When I go out in our community, we walk the lanes. Sarah's much more important to me. I go across third, fourth generation farmers, the things, the stories that they want to tell and everything else. So if you move on to the next slide, our heritage project, we've also learned from match funding to roll a project up. Not just ask for the little bit at the bottom, to roll it up to have this bigger vision. And this is our biggest vision, is to celebrate our heritage in our villages. And we will create a heritage trail with placards, looking at our pathways, partnering with our local paths groups, you know, our working group there, and celebrating this. So Carnbo, which we all know from Road Safety A91, this is a different side of Carnbo. Carnbo has the Butters Road for it, where the butter was taken from Kinross, where the monks made it, up to Scone Palace. And that road still exists to walk. What a fantastic story to see that. Moving on to our next one. From Carnbo, and it's got the Ock Hills as the foothills.
We'll have windmills soon.
Yeah, don't go there. If you look at the Crook of Devon and Drum, there is the trial of the local witches in 1662, and it's all the history. We've worked very closely, was really excited about it. Roderick Moncrief, who is Tullibol Castle. They've been in their family since 1700. What he's got up in his attic, he's told me, is amazing, of all the heritage that he can bring down to that. They built a witch's maze that's in Tullibol Castle. Going on again. To the next slide.
Going.
And then from there, you then move over to Rumbling Bridge, the two bridges. You know, the first bridge was built, I've got the names wrong, 1713. And we are actually working with a historian, Dr. Phil Back, who's actually writing a book on Rumbling Bridge. There's a lovely article he's just sent me on the fall and rise of tourism at Rumbling Bridge back into the 1700s. It's amazing, you think what you put there. Need a development gorge master plan, absolutely need it to be looked at and managed. The second thing that we found, again, in a barn, was an old iron suspension bridge that has a link back to Charles Rennie Mackintosh. It was originally over the Crook of Devon, down in the back of the Arndine estate, was dismantled because it was falling apart. And when you do the history, and that's the muck-up, you find out that actually Charles Rennie Mackintosh was doing his apprenticeship with a company that was down there redoing part of the castle and the grounds up there. And by the by, they built a suspension bridge. It's now in a yard somewhere. It's been laid out, as looked, and we'll be seeking funding to bring that up to Rumbling Bridge Gorge. And you can think about what that place will then be as a heritage asset. Moving on, the next slide, please. From Rumbling Bridge, you think you go to Pall Mill. That's where I live. And Pall Mill has got our only listed building here, Mowbray Hall. Is a Cat C listed building. It was built in 1910. It was donated and built by the Mowbray family of the estate, who wanted somewhere for the kids to go and schools and whatever. Interestingly, on a call with Dr. Phil Back, he is in touch with the living descendant of J.J. Mowbray, who we're now in touch with, who has actually got all of the history of why his family donated that to Pall Mill. We've just today had Perth Heritage Trust there visiting us. PKC kindly paid for the survey. They have been out, they're really excited about the building. They're going to help fund us to replace the windows. We've now got a very, very active hall committee there who are up the ladders painting the eaves. We're going to need planning permission. So anybody got any leeway on that? Say yes, please. And so that will be part of our nature trail. And then lastly, the last part of our heritage trail will be,
It's coming.
it's there, Blaringon. Blaringon has such a heritage. It was mining. And then we've just had a survey doing about at the back of the old former school. And underneath there is a mine shaft only 20 foot below, which is about 1800s, which is one of the earliest mine shafts in Scotland. Vickers Bridge Road, which runs down the side of it, there was a murder there. Back in the, no, it could have been. Vickers Bridge Road had a murder there. A baker was murdered by somebody who was caught for it. And that person was the last public hanging in Scotland at Perth Prison, and 2,000 people turned up to watch it. So you can see what's on my placards on my heritage trail.
Put it on the flag.
I know, I'll put it on the flag. This is the former school, which we are going to do. We will be doing a community asset transfer of the school to the trust. Now we have a focal point for that, because that is going to be the location of our heritage. So everything that is in people's attics, barns, that is going to be in there. We're going to do craft workshops. We're bringing back the old crafts. I've met 2 farmers' wives who have recently set up sheepskin rug making with felting on the back. Did it during COVID, they couldn't get rid of the sheepskin. They could run workshops. We've been talking to Poppy Jarrett about UNESCO funding to actually create kilns in there. We've got 2 potters to be pottery kilns. We have got, thinking of weaving looms, photographic, because half a mile down the road, 124 holiday lodges are currently just starting construction. So we want to bring their money, their tourist money, into our economy. We will create jobs. We will have all of our village, our remote rural crafts co-located where they can come and do workshops. We provide jobs to our community. That's me. So we're looking for support. We're looking for, you know, if ever you find a fund, down, because I'm good at spending money. We have, it's the other thing we actually have been managed to access £140,000 of funding.
You have?
Yeah, we have for the projects that we've done to date.
Good.
And so we are really, you know, we've got Scottish Land Funds, lottery funding, a lot from yourselves, Rumbling Bridge Hydro funding, Fossaway funding, and now we're going into the bigger time, because that Heritage Trail project has been costed up around about 120,000, because part of it will renovate Marbury Hall, and the other part of it, there's an old lathe that's in the Crook of Devon through the 3 mills that was there. That's how Walk Mill got its name. It was the mill. And
I'm just looking at Kirsty here. Well, she might have funding for the.
We'll be looking at match funding. We have been asked to put an expression of interest into Historic Environment Scotland. We will go for Heritage Lottery funding, and we will be looking for other sources of funding as well. Perth Heritage Trust only had £5,000. I said, I'll take it.
Yep.
We are looking, we're just about on, we're on that cusp now of just going from a trust that was producing a community action plan, local place plan, to really stepping up, I think. And we've done all of our governance to be able to take on this kind of money and manage it properly.
Well done.
That's us.
And this will allow us to take forward the asset transfer of Blaringon School.
I was going to ask about
total. Yes, yes.
He's going to respond.
More just on the update that I gave at the last committee in terms of we're looking at doing rural workshops at the moment. Probably, you know, we work closely with Sharon's team as well in terms of getting an understanding of what projects are out there, what are shovels ready, but ones that we can.
Mine's written up.
Yeah.
Here's what.
If there's any funding mechanisms that come on, we've got projects here already in mind.
I will. Good. I can send you those. This is fully costed. Well, virtually fully costed now. I met a lovely gentleman, the CVO, who turns the Heritage Trail, the placards that we're doing too. We're going to work with the school, the primary school, into comics. Isn't that amazing? Comics. So the heritage, the history, like which trails would be in a comic, it could be in black and white, where we can sell that along with colouring pens in our shops. And the last one for stonemasons, Rory from Perth Heritage Trust said what they will do is, because we need some stonework done on her, they actually bring children out from Kinross High School and from Stirling University with a stonemason, and they upskill them and give them a new skill. Isn't that amazing? So we'll be doing that as well.
Is that in place?
That doesn't sit with me. I don't know if that's coming from Pride in Place, but I don't have an update on that, but I can get one. Pride in Place. No, Pride in Place, unfortunately, is Perth and Kinross wasn't successful. This was the methodology that the Scottish UK government used. Didn't fit with our profile. So yeah, we missed out on that. But
I was going to mention the local growth funds, obviously, but that's, again, we don't know much more other than the allocations, 19.5 million, but it's been given to region, and it's going to, I think it'll be regional based projects that has to be spent as well, but we're still waiting on a formal update on that.
Okay.
I didn't see anything about communities in that fund either, so I think it must just do with infrastructure. So
I think Willie's got a question.
Yeah, I was involved at this when we started creating the Lochleven Heritage Trail, and it was originally going to be called the Lochleven Trail. But we found that unless we used that word heritage,
correct,
it didn't open up the funding things from the lottery, etc., that we needed to get. So I'm really delighted to see you. It still works.
I know it's buzzwords.
There's a huge amount of funds out there, including philanthropists and local landowners that are willing to donate.
So, and DTAS memberships opens the doors to those.
And you've got the community shares as well.
Yeah.
Lots of that.
It was just a quick comment about, I'm sure that you will be successful in raising funds, but there's this thing that we have a problem with, and we've hit the ceiling. It's got to do with competition regulations, and you have a limit of 350,000 over 3 years. Once you've hit that ceiling, the government are obliged not to give you any more. When a bus costs £130,000, it doesn't take you long to hit that. So as Glenfarne Community Transport, we aim to cover the whole of Kinross-shire and a part of Kilmarnockshire.
That's just to start with.
We're not going any further than that. But it becomes a struggle for us. We need something like probably about 15 buses in total. We've at the moment got 9, but it's just a struggle to actually get around these regulations.
So what you're talking about there is the subsidy control. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
However, there's subsidy control exemptions just coming out because there's a recognition that in community areas, particularly rural areas, we need to get more and more money in because the council's support is shrinking, and so communities are encouraged to do more. So that legislation's coming out, and I'm trying to write something which is kind of a cut and paste from the Highlands and Islands to be able to make those things exempt, or at least increase the limit for you guys.
Because things like the Plugged-in Communities Fund, which offered minibuses, offered you five buses, but 5 buses cost £450,000, so you automatically bust the regulation. We had hoped to get buses that we could actually use around Kinross-shire, so that's good news.
Yeah, that's something. It's worth comment.
Yeah,
So if anybody wants to understand more about our journey, particularly going into local place plans, just shout, because that is challenging.
I'd like to know where the cat's at, but I'll do that offline after.
Yeah.
So I'm just wanting to make sure officers are keeping pace with what
they are.
The speed at which you're moving. It's quite difficult. If there's no more questions or comments or anything, we have a couple more things here, but I think Kirsty's willing to do an update by email on Tay City Steel and the Kinross-shire Committee Finance. Good. Are you happy to present on the sustainability group?
It will take 2 minutes.
Okay, carry on then.
It will take 2 minutes. Sustainability group, a group that was formed back in about 2024, I think we first started talking about it. 3 people started talking about potential wind farm developments in the Ochils, which would impact upon the area. We realised that through conversation that there could be a potential of community benefits which may come through the developers. The group was formed. We are not for or against wind farms. That is not why the sustainability group was formed. It was to try and maximise any and all potential community benefits which may come. From 3 people talking about it, I'm now pleased to say that we have all community councils on board. We've had several meetings with community councils, but we also include Earn, Dunning and Muckett because they have impacted in certain ways. The main impact obviously was on Fossaway area because of the where the constructions were. We have managed to speak with all the developers, EPAR and Galileo, and we have in place an MOU which will be signed between the group and Galileo, which secures us money for each kilowatt which will be produced by the wind farm if and when it goes ahead, and also a construction fund. They've also put money up for a construction fund which we'll get. We are in talks with EPAR, who are the Brunt Hill development, which is still going through the energy consents unit. That's not been decided yet. Basically, keeping it really short, we will be constituted in the next couple of months. We will be a group who will end up looking at having trustees so that any money that comes in is managed. We want to manage the money not just on a short-term basis where everybody can have a lovely hanging tickets, we can paint the town hall. I'm sure Nicola will be to the forefront to ask for money, but very quickly, I fall by Glen Flag. 30%, the figure is at 30% of the money will be put in a common good fund, if you like to call it that. 70% may be used for strategic projects, which means we could create jobs, we could create industry, we could create employment in the area. That's where we are at the moment. Next meeting on hopefully 19th of March to take things forward. EPAR will be coming to give a presentation on that.
Who's members of which community councils?
All community councils, community councils.
Is there any outside Kinross?
Yeah, Dunning and Muckett.
Okay, you're not going across into Clackmannan?
No.
The reason I mention that is they've just. I know, but I mean, I'm talking about dollar. And,
no.
Okay, it's just there's more applications coming in that side of things. Okay.
But if you thought about doing that, how wide do you go?
Yeah, they can sort themselves out.
We've got to draw the boundaries.
That's really well done.
Yeah,
good. Thank you.
You think about the numbers, Neil, in terms of the. I think it was mentioned at Kinross, but you said you signed an agreement with them in terms of the generation, in terms of the funds available that you'll have potentially.
Potentially, if you think of £5,000 per megawatt, which should be produced over 30 years of a wind farm, we're talking about £40 million, which could come in, which can come into the communities and be properly used. And it's not. It's a lot of buses. It's a lot of buses, isn't it? What I will say, it will not be money used to prop up what the council should be doing.
Yeah.
On that note, are we all finished?
Yep, well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies.